The Houston Texans get an early Christmas gift with the return of linebacker Christian Harris and left guard Kenyon Green.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Welcome to the Locked On Texans podcast. I'm your credential media member, Brian Big Sarge Bearfield, your Texas insider. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for being an everyday on the show, which is part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. On today's show, we're going to talk about Texans welcome back Harris and Green, something they definitely need at this time of the year. Marquee matchup, one that you have to watch for. Texas wide receiver Nico versus Miami Dolphins cornerback Jalen Ramsey. And with the absence of linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair, who has to serve a 3-game suspension, the Texans have to contain AJ. But first, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, what's going on, y'all? Hey, listen. I don't know how you all feel about Christmas, but Christmas time is my favorite part of the year. I love Christmas. I love Christmas. And not just so much because of the music and the lights and the trees, the decoration, the Christmas markets. Everybody's in a festive mood. I like getting gifts. And when you get gifts, it makes you smile. On Monday, the Houston Texans got an early Christmas gift. You know, sometimes you got to wait. I don't know how you open your gifts, either the night before or the day of Christmas, but the Houston Texans got an early Christmas gift with the return of linebacker Christian Harris and left guard Kenyon Green. Now, we know that Christian Harris has been out the entire season. When he came into training camp, he was slated to play right on the right side of Azeez Al-Shaair. And that was going to be a 1-2 tandem, a 1-2 duo that was going to take the Houston Texans defense to the next level, especially when you have a linebacker like Azeez Al-Shaair coming in, becoming the quarterback of that defense. And then you have a linebacker like Christian Harris, who we seen take a turn for the better towards the end of last season with the way that D'Amico Ryan's head coach of the Houston Texans was coaching him up. So I like the fact that he was receptive and he was taking that next step to becoming a better linebacker. That 1-2 duo alongside of Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter, and then you got Derek Stingley, you got Kamari Lassiter out there playing the cornerback position. That defense was primed to take that next step. But then the injury happened. And I think that what happened was Christian Harris tried to come back entirely too soon. When we were at training camp, we seen that he played, I want to say, maybe 2 to 4 snaps after missing about the first week of training camp. He tried to play 2 to 4 snaps, and then next thing you know, he was back on IR again. He was back injured again and had to be placed on IR. Christian Harris hasn't played since January 20th of 2024, and that was the playoff game against the Baltimore Ravens, where he had 7 tackles, 6 solo, and 1 tackle for loss, 1 quarterback hit. Christian Harris can play. Let's just go ahead and get that out the way. We know that Christian Harris can play. We know that Christian Harris is an athlete. We know that under D'Amico Ryan's tutelage, we've seen him take that next step. Everybody's seen the clip of D'Amico telling him exactly what's going to happen in that Cleveland Browns game. And he did it to perfection, got the pick 6. And so my only issue is when you look at Christian Harris, how good of game shape is he in? Being able to practice is one thing, but that game speed is another. And on Monday, Houston Texans head coach D'Amico Ryan was asked a question about the return of Christian Harris.
Christian's done an outstanding job of working off to the side, and our strength conditioning staff, our sports performance staff, done a great job of working with Christian and just seeing him back out, moving around. He looks like himself physically, moving around. It's just a matter of, like you said, missing a lot of football. It's just a matter of him getting back in and getting those mental reps. There's nothing can help you do football except playing football. So he just has to get out there and get those physical reps of hearing a call, getting lined up. But physically, he looks like he's in a really good spot.
I hear what D'Amico's saying. I understand what D'Amico's saying. I understand him saying that watching Christian Harris from the side, it doesn't look like he suffered any setbacks in the time that he's watched him practice on the sideline. But it's that game speed. That game speed is the one thing that's going to be a huge issue for the Houston Texans defense when it comes to bringing Christian Harris back. Their next 4 games their next 3 games. That last game against the Tennessee Titans, it could be a game where they could be playing for playoff position, or they could have been solidified a playoff position, and then they're able to rest some starters and get Christian Harris some more snaps. By the fourth game towards the end of the season, he should be able to be back in shape to whereas he's ready to go and play into the playoffs. But he's got to be on a snap count against the Miami Dolphins. He has to be on a snap count against the Kansas City Chiefs. He has to be on a snap count against the Baltimore Ravens. Those are 3 teams, 2 of those who are already in the playoffs, and one of those in the Miami Dolphins, their next opponent, who's barely surviving, who has that prayer that we're trying to make the playoffs. And when you're playing against a team like the Miami Dolphins, that's a track team on the other side. They have a track team. Christian Harris suffered a lower body injury. I don't know if you want him chasing around Waddle. I don't know if you want him chasing around Tyreek Hill. Hell, I don't even know if you want him chasing around Jonnu Smith. And then you have Devon Achane coming out of the backfield. That's a lot on a linebacker, especially one who hasn't played the entire season. So while the Houston Texans organization, the Houston Texans players, that locker room will welcome back Christian Harris, I don't know how effective he's going to be and what he's going to be able to bring to this team in the first 2 or 3 games, especially 3 games of not having Azeez Al-Shaair, who's going to be serving that suspension. It's going to be one of those things where, you bring him in here, you give him maybe first or second down, you make sure you take him out on third down, or you play him 1 series and let him sit out 1 or 2 series just so he can get his win. The one thing that I loved about what the Houston Texans did with Nico Collins, they didn't rush him back. And even though when he came off of IR, he was ready to play, they set him out 1 more week and said, okay, we're going to give you 1 more week to get yourself together to make sure you're back in game shape, game speed, and then we'll insert you back into the lineup. So I don't expect Christian Harris to be inserted into the lineup right off the rip. I don't. But what I do see, what I hope to see is Christian Harris use all this time off to become a better linebacker and to ingratiate himself into that lineup alongside a Henry To'oTo'o, a Devin White, a Neville Hewitt, Jake Hansen. We may even see Jamal Hill. So that was a nice surprise and a welcome surprise, a nice surprise, an expected surprise to have Christian Harris be designated for a return. Now, this is where it gets interesting. I don't know what's going to happen now that Kenyon Green is back. Do you put Juice Scruggs back at center and put Kenyon Green at the left guard position? Because the problem that the Houston Texans have is they're very good at pass protection when you have Jared Patterson at the center position and you have Juice Scruggs at the left guard position. John and I talked about that here. You're very good in the pass protection, but then the run protection slows down. Like you can see Joe Mixon struggling. The one thing that I loved about Kenyon Green is that he's a road grader. When you put him in that lineup, he's going to make sure that he's going to destroy everything in front of him in the run game. It's the pass game that he has the issues and the problems. And so because he has the issues and the problems, you look at it and you say to yourself, how is that going to work? Jared Patterson has also played very well at the center position. It looks like he has more command, more control. He's calling out more than what Juice has done. And so maybe having Juice next to him these last couple of games that Kenyon Green has been out, maybe he's been able to see that. Maybe moving him to that left guard position helps him out a whole lot better. Maybe it helps him out to see, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. Look, let me tell you all, sometimes you have got to take a step back from a situation to be able to see everything. And I think that may help Juice Scruggs. Nick Caserio said on last week that Juice Scruggs is a better center than he is a left guard. And so he probably knew that Kenyon was getting ready to come off and be designated for return. Now, how does that work, though? Because the one thing that Kenyon did was lack confidence when he was in the game. The last game he played in October 31st, Halloween night against the New York Jets, when he got hurt, he was not playing the best then. His confidence had dropped a lot. And so has he built up his confidence since he's been away, being able to watch the game, being able to sit in the film room, film study, and see the things that's going on film when you're away from the game, watching the way that Juice and Jarrett communicate with each other? Like that's the one thing that's the one thing that you have to, that's going to have to take into account. What this coaching staff is going to have to take into account is he ready, and is he confident enough to be inserted back into the starting lineup? Now, I know one person who never lacks confidence for the Houston Texans, and that's wide receiver Nico Collins. But he's also going up against a big personality this week in Miami Dolphins cornerback Jalen Ramsey. That's a marquee matchup you don't want to miss. We'll talk about that after the break. Hey, Locked On Texans fans. I know you're like me and your holiday shopping list is, let's just say, far from complete. Yeah, I still need to do a little bit more. Well, if that's the case, I've got the perfect gift for the passionate sports fan in your life. Perhaps you've heard of Ice Shaker. Ice Shaker is now officially licensed with the NFL, NHL, NBA, NCAA, and MLB, and will make the ideal gift for your loved one. It is kitchen-grade stainless steel bottles that won't absorb odor like the plastic bottles do. The patented twist-in agitator that breaks up powders, but it's silent when you shake it instead of that annoying ball, that metal ball that gets inside. You know what? I have one myself. And I love the fact that, you hear that? I can just shake it up. And it's easy customizable. You can customize it, put your logo on it, everything. You see, we got one that say Houston Texans. Created by and used by the Gronkowski brothers, Ice Shakers has sold over 1 million bottles. They have changed the game with the workout bottles, and this is the gift that you've been looking for. Go to iceshaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout to save 25% on your order. Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 200 times your money on Prize Pick. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in reward during Pickmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And if you like me, you can use a little extra cash, especially if you have grandkids. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. Download the Prize Pick app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. Prize Picks, run your game. Welcome back, Battle Red Nation, to the Locked On Texas podcast. I know you're probably asking yourself, hey, man, don't you normally do this show with another person? No, not Cody Davis. I normally do the show with John, some sports guy, Hickman. John will be missing a couple of episodes. He's dealing with the family emergency that arose over this past weekend. And so just send your thoughts and prayers out to John and to Big Sarge, because he's going to have to be able to deal with John once he comes back, because he gonna want to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. No, I'm just playing. John, we missed you, brother. Hope to see you back here soon. All right. I don't know how many of you all have ever had the opportunity to meet Texas wide receiver Nico Collins. If you do, that is probably going to be one of the best experiences you have ever had in your life. Listen, let me tell you all something. My life has gotten better ever since I've gotten a chance to meet Nico Collins. I spoke with Nico on Monday. We weren't even talking about football. We were just talking about something totally different. And Nico can never, ever hide the fact, no matter how much money he makes, no matter how much fame and glory that he gets, he'll never be able to hide the fact that he's from Birmingham, Alabama, and that comes out a lot. Nico is one of the best people, like I said, you're ever going to want to meet. But he's also one of the most competitive people that you're going to meet. And every time he steps on that field, for as nice as he is off the field, for the way that he is off the field, once he steps in between those hashes, he always said, "Hey, Sarge, you know what it is. You know what time it is. You know what I came here to do." He said, I can't get to that next contract if I ain't out here competing. Plus, I just don't like to lose. So when he goes up against these marquee defensive backs in the league, when he's playing against these big name defensive backs in the league, some that have been anointed as top 10, and rightfully so. Some of these players have earned that right. Some of them have earned that right, like Miami Dolphins quarterback Jalen Ramsey. He's earned that right. He's played some of the best football we have seen from a cornerback in a very long time. Ever since he's been in the league, he's been able to take the best wide receiver, the number one wide receiver, and play him one-on-one straight up. Now, side note, hey, on Sunday, Garrett Wilson kind of made him look like you might want to go back and, up your sliders on Madden. But Garrett Wilson was one of those. Garrett Wilson gave Jalen Ramsey the runaround against on Sunday when the Jets played the Miami Dolphins. I expect that exact same thing once he lines up in front of Nico Collins. Nico Collins still has a lot to prove. Before his injury, Nico Collins was the number one wide receiver as far as receptions was concerned. As far as yards was concerned in the NFL. And then he got hurt and he had to sit out, which is something that has bothered him from the time he got injured to every time he steps back on the field. Nico Collins knows that he is a very good wide receiver. Nico Collins knows that he is a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. And even the Houston Texans thought of him as well. Even though he didn't get the biggest contract this past offseason, they showed him, Nico, we want you here. We believe in you. And him being that number one option for quarterback CJ Stroud, him being that big target, every quarterback has to have that one receiver that when I'm in trouble, I need somebody to get me out of trouble. Most of the time, for first and second year quarterbacks, it's normally the tight end. It's normally the tight end that they depend on a lot. Not so much the number one wide receiver, because they're still trying to learn how to get the ball to the number one wide receiver. But we know that CJ Stroud is totally different than anybody else that we've ever seen for the Houston Texans. And I know that's including that other guy that used to be here that wore number 4. CJ Stroud is different. So CJ Stroud doesn't need to depend and lean on the tight end when he gets in trouble. One of the people he always looks for is the guy that's 6'4" with the catch radius as big as NRG Stadium. Not only that, he's one of those guys that's physical. He's one of those guys that can catch. He's one of those guys that has speed that I don't think that they give him enough credit for the speed that he has. But Nico Collins is a true number one receiver in the NFL. He's the true number one receiver for the Houston Texans. And he knows that. And he plays that way. And now that he has to go up against cornerback Jalen Ramsey for the Miami Dolphins, I don't think that there is another player I don't think there's another defensive back for the Miami Dolphins that has the pedigree to be able to hold Nico Collins one-on-one. Well, I don't even want to say hold, just line up in front of. You got to be able to play. Let's just say that. You got to be able to play. You also have to have a different mindset that I got to be physical because he's going to be physical. I also know that I can't make any missteps because if I make any missteps, he's gone. And now I'm playing catch up. Think about it like this. You remember when Nico Collins first came back in the Dallas Cowboys game? His first reception that was a touchdown, 75-yard touchdown that got called back because of a penalty on Laramie Tunsil. But his first reception, touchdown. He's one of those guys. Nico Collins is a big play wide receiver. And I know I'm not telling you something that you don't already know. I understand that. Texas fans, Battle Red Nation, I know that you watch Nico Collins in the way that he plays. But I don't think that the Miami Dolphins, I don't think that they really know. I don't think that they know what they're in for. I don't think Jalen Ramsey really knows what he's in for. Oh, yeah, of course, when, they came here in the offseason and they got a chance to play, they got a chance to scrimmage against the Houston Texans. They went one-on-one. That's just, we're just warming up here. Hey, guys, we're warming up here. We're really not trying to get hurt. I'm going to show you what I can do, but not everything that I can do. Now the Houston Texans need Nico Collins to help them get on track for these next 4 games, and it starts with the Miami Dolphins. It has to be this game. It has to be against Jalen Ramsey so he can show the Baltimore Ravens, he can show the Kansas City Chiefs, and when they match up against the Tennessee Titans again, he can show them, hey, look, this is what's going to happen heading into the playoffs. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to just sit here and act like Jalen Ramsey is some guy that the Miami Dolphins found off the street. He's one of those guys that can play. He's a dog. He's paid the way he's paid for a reason. And Nico is not going to just be able to line up and say, I got this. I'm going to beat him on every play. There's going to be some plays where Jalen Ramsey, gets to him. There's going to be some plays where Jalen Ramsey is going to knock the ball out of his hands. So it was one of those things where I'm looking to see how is Nico Collins and that matchup between him and Jalen Ramsey. That's going to stand out. There's going to be a lot of matchup issues, and we're going to talk about that later on in the week on the Locked On Texans podcast. We'll talk about that later on in the week about these different matchups. But Jalen Ramsey, Nico Collins, that's a marquee matchup. Now, for as much as we want to see Nico Collins have a great day, the Houston Texans have to find a way to contain Achane. Battle Red Nation, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place the bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making the Locked On Texans podcast your first listen today. Now for your second listen, go find new Locked On NFL now with 2 shows every day. First, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL Espresso, and then stop by the Barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right. I know. We've talked about it ad nauseum. We all know. I think that on Monday, Texas head coach DeMeco Ryans was tired of it as well. We all know that the Houston Texans will be without linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair. That is a huge blow to that Houston Texans defense for the next 3 games. He was suspended for 3 games for the hit that he put on Trevor Lawrence and not leaving the field in a timely manner. And he tried to appeal to get it brought down from 3 games to, to have his sentence reduced, and it didn't happen. They upheld the 3-game suspension, and now the Houston Texans have to play without Achane against the Miami Dolphins, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Baltimore Ravens. They're going to need him in all 3 of the games, but this week's matchup against the Miami Dolphins, I think, is where they're really, really, really going to miss him. Miami has a running back, hometown guy by the name of Achane. Now, for those of you all who have listened to me before, you've heard me say that it's unfair sometimes with the Miami Dolphins and that track team that they have, because Jalen Waddle, another Houston guy, is fast. Tyreek Hill, I don't even know if I don't know what word. What's better than fast? What's a better word than fast? Like, what's a different word? Like, how can you say fastest of the fast? Because Tyreek Hill is fast. And so now you got to worry about Jalen Waddle. And then you got to worry about Tyreek Hill. But in the backfield, the Miami Dolphins have a running back in Achane that is just as fast. If you allow him any type of crease in the line, he's gone. He's gone. So you have to get to him early, and you have to get to him often. Now, the one thing that I'm not worried about when it comes to the Texans linebackers in Henry To'oTo'o, Neville Hewitt, Devin White, and you may even see Jake Hansen play a little bit on Sunday against the Miami Dolphins. The one thing that group as a whole can do, they can definitely stop the run. Neville Hewitt is almost a contact magnet. And when Azeez Al-Shaair was hurt earlier this year, Neville Hewitt stepped right up, played in that position, and helped out a lot. He helped out a lot. Now, I will say this. He played very well alongside Jalen Petrie. Jalen Petrie had a lot to do with being that third linebacker sometimes. And we seen what he was able to do against the Green Bay Packers. He was able to get in the passing lane and get Neville Hewitt his first interception of the season. And so he helped create turnovers. So, yes, they're also going to miss Jalen Petrie. He's going to be out in. They're going to play Jimmy Ward in that spot some. They're going to play Miles Brown in that corner slot position some. But that group as a whole with To'oTo'o, White, Hewitt, and Jake Hansen, they can stop the run. Where they suffer it and where they're going to miss Azeez Al-Shaair the most at is in pass coverage. If you listen to the Locked On Texans podcast, you heard John and I talk about maybe D'Amico and defensive coordinator Matt Burke can get Jamal Hill, the rookie, some snaps. Maybe they can get him into the game because he is a converted safety that's playing linebacker now. And so he knows how to play in pass coverage. Although he was the last line of defense when he played safety, he had everything in front of him. He's a little bit closer to the line now, but he still knows routes. He knows route concepts. And you need a guy in the game at that point to be able to see those type of things developing, seeing what the running back is going to do, seeing what the tight end is going to do. So maybe this is a game that Jamal Hill gets snaps, because if he doesn't, and you're depending on that other group to be in pass coverage, that's where you're going to miss Al-Shaair, who is the best pass covering linebacker the Houston Texans have outside of Christian Harris. Even with Christian Harris coming back, we know that he's going to be on a snap count, and that's a lot to ask of him to be able to watch and to be man up on Achane, one of those guys that, like I said, they really have a track team over there. All they need they probably could put Jonnu Smith on their 4x1 and they could win. But you don't want Achane to be able to get loose. Now, he's one of those guys, though. He's a rhythm type guy. So he has to have both things working. So if he gets the run game going, if him and Mike McDaniels get the run game going, if him and Tua Tagovailoa get that run game going, then it opens up the passing game that involves him as well. It involves him. So it's going to be on the Houston Texans to be able to stop the Houston Texans linebacker core, to be able to stop Achane, contain him in the run game, and then don't allow him the space to be able to operate in the passing game. Because if you give Tua another lane, if you give Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa another weapon in that passing game, then the Houston Texans are going to have a long day. So I know everybody's going to look and say, well, they got to make sure that they contain Tyreek Hill. They got to make sure that they contain Jalen Waddle. No, the piece that makes that thing go is the running back, Achane. So you have to contain Achane. So this week, what the Houston Texans need to do, what their linebacking core needs to do, is they need to play against players who have that type of speed. If I'm Matt Burke, if I'm D'Amico Ryans, what I'm doing is using Steven Sims and putting him in the backfield and let him be Achane. Steven Sims, wide receiver, kick returner, punt returner sometimes. We know that he has the speed. He has pretty much the same type of speed that Achane has. So you put him and you allow that linebacker core to get used to watching some of these moves, being some of the, getting down here, holding him in the pass coverage. Because if not, it's going to be a long day for that linebacker core. And if it's a long day for that linebacker core, now that means that front four and the defensive line, they're going to have to put more pressure on Tua. They're going to have to get to Tua quicker than they want to. If you allow him any time and the linebackers aren't locked in on Achane, if they're not containing Achane, then it's going to be a long day for them. And now you've also put these defensive backs in a situation to whereas Waddle and Tyreek Hill, all they're looking for is space. Yes, they're running routes, but they're looking for space. All they want to do is get their hands on the ball and then, get that yak. That's the yards after catch. And so if you stop Achane, you force Tua to be able to have to start looking in other places. Now, I know that Achane won't be his first read, but the linebackers need to make him take him completely out every time. Hey, look, this isn't an option for you, Tua. Achane is not an option for you. And when you have the front four that the Houston Texans have in Will Anderson Jr., Tim Settle Jr., who is playing? Oh, the Nico Autry and Danielle Hunter. They can control that running game. They can control him coming in between, everything in between the tackles. They can control that. You just don't want him to get out to whereas now your linebackers are chasing him because there's nobody, there's no linebacker that has the speed to be able to catch him once he gets into an open space. So one of the keys to victory this week for the Houston Texans is they're going to have to contain Achane. They're going to have to make sure that they make him a non-factor and make sure that Tua has to find other ways and other options. Now, I know we talked earlier about Jalen Ramsey and how good Jalen Ramsey is. The Houston Texans, I'll go ahead and say it. Listen, if don't nobody else say it, I'm going to say it. Come closer, let me tell you the secret. Derek Stingley Jr. will be an NFL All-Pro. And I don't think Tua, who knows Derek Stingley Jr. very well, I don't think he wants those type of problems having to try to pick on him. If he's able to do what he needs to do, those linebackers should be able to contain Achane. Thank you for listening to the Locked On Texans podcast. Make sure you're following me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Big Star Sports with the Z at the end. Make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Texans podcast and to the Locked On Texans YouTube page. Until next time, I'm out.